Hi, everybody. It's Jenna with Coach with Jenna. And today I'm super excited. We're going to be talking about what it means to hit rock bottom, what that looks like for other people, and, how people learn and just kind of the whole perspective on rock bottom. Today we have a very special guest, Jade Weeks, and she's going to share her story on her rock bottom and what it means to her what rock bottom means, and I'm going to share a little bit about my perspective as well, but let you introduce yourself, Jade.
Yeah, my name is Jade. I'm a trans Peruvian woman. I've been in Vancouver since 2011. Grew up in a small town just off of Vancouver, and left that as quick as I could because the city is where I belong. I've been doing music and content creation for my entire life, and always would work. Everyone that knows me knows that I just constantly work. And I found that I work because I'm running away from what I don't want to deal with. So the more I work, the more I feel accomplished. I stay ahead of those. Still something I do. It's just kind of what I find helps me cope.
Yeah, yeah. And what would you say is what does rock bottom actually like mean to you?
It means when you feel rock bottom, you have nowhere. Like it feels like you're just trapped in a jar
Mm-hmm.
where no matter where you go, no matter what you do, there's walls, there's stuff stopping you. Um, Even though you can see outside when you look up, it's unobtainable.
Yeah, 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 definitely. I find that like, and it's really hard, but I find that it's, I talk a lot about growth and everything, but it's I always say to people too, if growth was easy, everybody would do it. Like there's a reason why people don't want to learn. There's a reason why people do continue to make the same mistakes because it's a lot in short term, it is hard to grow and be accountable and learn from your mistakes, but long term, it's actually harder to stay in that rock bottom, to stay in that rut that you're in. And it's easier said than done for some people, but I think that as hard as it is, I think some people really do have to hit rock bottom before they can learn. And some people choose to stay in that rock bottom, right? Because they're scared or they don't want to open up and kind of expand their perspective and kind of like a butterfly. Maybe they're stuck being a caterpillar, like they want to they're not ready to like spread their wings. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and like,
Yeah.
we know that change is scary.
Yeah.
Change is hard. I think one of the things, like currently I'm in a low point in my mental health, which is weird because before 3 years ago or something like that, I always thought, oh, other people deal with mental health. I don't, I'm great. I have some things, but I don't have what everyone else is. And it wasn't and then even when I hit like rock bottom with my life, I was like, oh well, at least I'm not crazy with depression or anxiety or things like that. And then funny enough, 3 years later, here I am in a different point of view where physically doing really well, height of my career, things like this, but I'm struggling mentally now. And it takes wanting to change and to try different things
Mhm.
to move past things.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's one of those things where, I myself used to be someone that never understood, what it would mean to be numb. And a couple months ago, I hit a rock bottom where I actually didn't want to be here anymore. Like I
Hmm.
was actually really suicidal and I would always, before that I was like, oh, I could never understand someone that doesn't have emotions. Like I've always been a bubbly person. And then everything that happened in those course of a few months, I just hit a rock bottom point of this is what it feels like to have no emotion.
Yeah.
This is what it feels like to literally not care if you were dead or alive. And I never, like looking back, I never want to feel that way again. And so it's like, I think I have a new level of compassion for others, but I also have a level of wanting to help myself more and
Yeah.
just wanting to continue on a growth path of building a life for myself. But I do have going through that, it's almost like you jinx it, you know? It's I never like understood until going through that moment, and I was like, wow, this is what it feels like to have nothing, to have no feelings, no emotion, no nothing. Like you literally feel absolutely nothing, and it's so scary. And like luckily I had support and I have friends and I have a professional and all that, and like I don't feel that way at all, not even close. But still it's I have a new perspective on it, and it just I have a new level of compassion for people that go through that, but I also do feel like sometimes rock bottom is an end point, unfortunately, for some people.
Mhm.
And it's so tragic and it's so sad. But I think the goal is for people to learn from their mistakes without having something dramatic happen. It'd be kind of cool to see humans get to a level where they're learning, but it doesn't have to be through, loss. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be through death. It doesn't have to be through all these dark things. Like my goal is I'd love for people to have that awareness of themselves and have the awareness that there's so many different points of rock bottom. Some are just little mistakes, some are big ones, some are deadly. And I think it's so sad, and it's heartbreaking because we all deserve a chance at life. We all deserve to be happy. And I think that, we need to find kind of like a middle ground where if you're someone that likes to learn, that's great. I like to learn too. I like to learn from my mistakes, but I don't want my mistakes to be like life threatening. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
there's got to be, I feel like there just needs to be that, like, when is enough going to be enough? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, one of the hard things too is that, as you said, like, like having to learn it firsthand for yourself. There's a lot of people that when they hit that, they don't make it out to the other side.
yeah.
And if we could pass this knowledge on without people having to experience that themselves, we'd still have those people.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so it's heartbreaking, right? Like I'm actually working on a documentary about my disability and my rock bottoms in my life. And yeah, it's like it's hard when I look back at like that moment of weakness that I had, that moment of not caring about anything. I was like, this is not me. Like, and when I actually thought about it, I'm like, God, is this really what people go through? Like, this is what some people feel like. I can't imagine, like, I just can't imagine feeling that way. You know what I mean? Like all the time, every single day. And so it's like, I do have that compassion, but I also have an awareness of it where I'm like, okay, I don't want this life. I want more for myself. I want better. I don't want to constantly be living in a rock bottom life. I want to learn, little mistakes here and there, but I think having that I would consider that was probably one of my rock bottoms. And I've had lots of rock bottoms in different types of my like different aspects of my life. But I think going to that deep of a depression and a darkness, I was like, wow, like this is terrifying. And luckily I had support. Luckily I have like I have someone I talk to, like I pay to talk to, right? So it's just I'm lucky that I was able to get out of that mindset, but it's still like I think the thing is, yeah, we need to, I think it's going to start with awareness, right? Being aware that, okay, this is what's going on. This is how I feel. What can I do to get out of it? You know?
But yeah, and that's the thing, like having that support is crucial. Um when I was at a very low point, um I reached out to a friend and she didn't fully understand because I didn't say much. But she immediately was like, "Hey, do you want to play a video game?" And I was like, "Sure." And she's like, "You don't even have to do anything. You can just play it with me." And we sat together and played this game for hours, and it got my mind off things. And I felt the connection because instead of playing a game where you both have objectives, we were playing it together where, she was controlling it and we were working together with it. And just that sense of interaction really helped pull me out of a place.
Wow. Yeah. Sometimes it just takes someone that you care about to help you, right? And I know I was lucky enough to have that too. I reached out to my girlfriend, and she like referred me to a professional, and like I'm now starting to like heal from my childhood. And like I think that yeah, it's hard, right? And like it's one of those things where everybody does have to learn on their own. But if you could tell the audience like what your advice would be on learning from rock bottom, like what would that look like?
It'll always feel like people don't hear you or don't care or don't connect. But a lot of that is because they're wrapped up in their own world.
Mm,
And, it feels weird to have to ask for people or to reach out or to even post like, hey, I need some help today or something like that.
yeah.
Um, but everyone needs help. And if you're always there helping other people out, whether it be like, going for a walk, hanging out with them, you're helping them just as much um as when you ask them to help you.
Yeah.
So it's not it's not shameful to ask for help
Yeah.
and or to even talk about it.
Yeah.
It made me feel really weird when I made a post about what was going on, but the amount of comments was really great and people being supportive, but also people that went beyond that
Yeah.
and messaged me and checked in. And then I made newer, closer friendships because of that.
Yeah.
Because, some people reached out and were like, hey, I battle these as well.
Mhm.
Um, this is what's worked for me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's the thing too, is like asking for help and knowing that it's okay to ask for help. I've had to learn that myself is because of my disability. I've always been like, I can do it on my own. And then I've learned the hard way that I certain things, no, I need support on. And that was my rock bottom, learning to, you know, realize that, you know what, I do need extra support and that's okay, right? That's nothing to be ashamed of. And I think it's just, I think there's also this stigma too that goes around where, people are judged very easily. And I think it's just like the biggest thing is learning to have compassion, but also taking care of yourself. And, like I think as a society, what we could do better on is, yeah, taking better care of ourselves and learning to say no to people that are hurting us, but also
Mm.
recognizing that they're hurting too. But also just, it's hard because it's like everybody's rock bottom is different, everybody's mindset is
Well,
different.
and you want to be compassionate.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. But you only have a certain amount of spoons to spend.
Yeah.
And if there's someone that needs a lot of help that's taking all your spoons, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
You can do other things to help them
Yeah.
as well as helping yourself. Be like, hey, have you tried this?
Yeah.
Maybe talk to this, do this.
Yeah.
And if they don't take you up on that, that's not your fault.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing is I think it's also like learning not to like overly save people, but like having compassion. Like because at the same time it's like you can have compassion, but at the end of the day the only person that can really help themselves is yourself,
Yeah.
right? Right, but it's just kind of like having an open heart and reaching out, but also having your boundaries and everything, right? But I think the thing with rock bottom is, I think the hardest part about rock bottom too, another thing I want to touch up on with this is not everyone learns. Have you found that? Have you ever
Oh
felt
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
not everybody actually learns?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's your
I
perspective on that?
I've had a bunch of friends where they've hit rock bottom. I've given them a bed. I've given them some cash, and we've gone through it. And then 2 months later, a month later, a week later, um, they're back making similar mistakes. And I'm like, that's fair. That's okay. That's okay to do.
Mm,
Um, but it just got to a point where like they weren't seeing their own pattern.
mm, mhm.
And no matter what, I could say it 100 times and be like, hey,
Yeah.
don't don't start drinking because that'll end poorly. Uh, but it was just never they never learned.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. That's where it's tough. It's like some people don't learn and some people do, but they, that feeling that they have or that thing they're struggling with is just so strong that they just maybe they, don't know how to get out, like I don't believe that every person that repeats their mistakes is not learning. I'm sure some people are aware of what they're doing, but that power of it, that whatever it may be, whether that's an addiction to something, or whether that's hurting other people, or whether that's hurting yourself, or whatever the rock bottom is for someone, some people don't know how to get out. Some
Mhm.
people want to, and then there's people that just don't have the motivation. And I think that's another thing that we struggle with, is that lack of motivation is.
Yeah, you definitely need something to fight for.
Yeah.
Um, I've my entire life I've worked towards financial stability. And that's, you know, it's what I've done. Always work harder, always work faster,
Mhm.
always get the work done.
Yeah.
Um, but now I've hit that. I've hit financial stability, and my mental health went down because of it.
Oh no.
Because I'm trying to find something new to fight for, and
Mm-hmm.
it's hard.
Yeah, it is. It is. What is keeping you going? Like, what's your ultimate motivation right now that's keeping you like growing and everything and all that?
Day to day, and my son.
Your son.
I have an amazing son. He's being raised with his mom over on the island at the moment. I don't get to see him as much as I'd like to, just because I have hard times on the ferries.
Yeah.
Um, but I can't give up because of him.
Yeah.
He doesn't deserve that.
Yeah.
Um, so that stopped me a few times from going down some dark paths. Um, but realistically, other than that, it's hard at the moment because I can have short-term goals and that feels good doing them, but I need something bigger. I need something to grasp on. So
Mhm.
I'm working on it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where, like we all have to have something to fight for. And when we've been conditioned as a kid by a certain lifestyle, it's really hard to unlearn those behaviors. And I think that is also a hard thing that goes hand in hand with rock bottom, is all these behaviors that we have to
Yes.
unlearn, right? It's
It's one of those things where like we always try and overcompensate for the ways our parents raised us.
mhm,
If we were abandoned, we're about holding people too tight.
yeah.
If we were you know, poor, we over budget, we over do things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard, and it's another thing I want to bring up too, and this is actually very powerful advice for if you ever have a friend that's struggling, or this is kind of what I tell my friends. If I have a friend, because I used to be in a friendship that was really unhealthy and just very controlling, and luckily I'm not in that anymore. But I've kind of approached my friendships differently now when it comes to rock bottom. Is when I have a friend, if they're making the same mistake over and over again, I don't sit there and I don't judge them. I ask them, what's your rock bottom look like to you?
Mm, mhm.
When's your rock bottom? Have you hit rock bottom yet? Because it's important to ask those questions, because then they're like, oh, maybe I haven't learned. Like that's so powerful. And I found that it actually gets them creating these thoughts for themselves, and I think that being that kind of it shows them that you're supporting them and that you're not judging them, but you're also giving them something to think about. You're giving them a perspective to think about, like, oh, instead of being like, oh, you keep making the same mistakes, blah blah blah. When is your rock bottom? What does your rock bottom look like, right?
I think one of the things about that is you're planting an internal thought rather than
Yeah.
putting an external thought.
Yeah.
You're not coming at them being like, hey, you should change. You're giving them tools to change. It's like inception.
Yeah. Exactly. And I found that helps a lot, because it makes the people that I care about think about their choices. And it's so powerful because people don't really think about the rock bottom
Hmm.
until it's brought up. They don't think about it. That's the thing I've noticed, is when we make mistakes, we don't think, we do. We just
Yeah.
do them, you know? And I think it's important to, like when we're making like a choice and we feel like it's going to hurt us, what are we getting out of this? You know,
Hmm.
what's the result? What, even asking your friends that, like getting to understand, like maybe showing them a level of, what, I want to understand you. Why are you making this choice? What's your outcome? What's your goal? What is your rock bottom? What is a mistake to you? Like asking all these questions, because then it gets them having that moment to themselves where like, oh, this is interesting. Maybe I should consider this, or is this a path that I really want to go down on, or is this the life that I want? Because
Hmm.
when we constantly, and I learned that the hard way. I used to be so, I never understood people. I was like, oh, I want to grow. And I've always had this, like, at least for the last 4 years, I've had this like growth mentality where I'm like, I just want to grow. And so when
Hmm.
I see people not wanting to grow or disrespecting me, I'd be like, I don't get it. I don't have the understanding of not wanting to do things in your life. But then I also have to realize that not everybody has that drive. Not everybody
Yeah.
has that motivation, right? And it's not up to me to decide. It's up to me to decide on what I do with my life. And so when I have people that I care about going through these rock bottom, instead of judging them, I just ask them, okay, what does this look like for you? Because then it helps. And I'm showing a level of compassion, but I'm not enabling them. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm not judging them, but I'm not encouraging them to hurt themselves. I'm giving them that opportunity to think for themselves.
Exactly.
So I think that's so important and anybody that's listening to, like, when, if you have a friend and you're worried about them, asking them these questions. What's your rock bottom? What is your mistakes? When is your rock bottom? Have you learned? Like, all these questions are so important because you're helping your friend, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like when you're trying to support someone, um it really needs to be organic. You need
Yeah.
to feel genuine. You need to come from where you and how you can support them all has to come from you and what you can do.
Mhm.
um it doesn't necessarily have to be some big grand gesture. You can just be there constantly and be there to help them
Yeah.
through this stuff, and that's what's really helped me a lot is just um having someone almost as a reference point to
Mhm.
be like, I want to be like you. And then as my life shifts around and things change, having them as a steady rock helps me feel grounded.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. And I think being role models helps too.
Yeah.
Being like, I've learned that people usually, they have an attraction to people that are into growth and that are doing well for themselves. And I think that, like, that's why I love what I do, because I get to make an impact. I get to help people. I get to be a, like, a figure for people, like a role model, like an influence, right?
Mhm.
And so when people see, if they see that, I'm being authentic, I'm having a voice, I'm being honest about who I am, they're gonna want, it's like a chain reaction. They're gonna want to do the same thing, right? So I think it's just also good to just, like, own who you are and be authentic and not be ashamed of, yes, we all make mistakes, right? Like, it's part of being human, but just being able to ask people, about their rock bottom and like what they've struggled with, how they've pulled themselves out, right?
Mhm.
Like what their next chapter looks like, you know?
Well, it makes them also be objective about their own life,
Yeah.
which a lot of people don't do. A lot of people just live it and are in it.
Yeah.
And the minute you can take someone out and make them look at it, you can be
Yeah.
like, oh, yeah, I do drink two sixes a day.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that's, if it's not something that's working for you, let's change it.
Yeah.
And then it allows them the ability to see it.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. What like, going forward, what does your goals look like? Like, do you have any, next
Yeah,
chapters or?
my goal is really to redefine my relationship with how I perceive achievements
Mhm. Yeah.
and goals of themselves.
Mhm.
Because I find lately when I achieve something, I don't get as much satisfaction from it because I'm hopping to the next thing so fast.
Mhm.
My goal is to sit with myself and enjoy the things, smell the roses, um, and enjoy life. when I have a day off, not to just fill it with things, to really enjoy something that I want to do.
Yeah.
And it's helped me. I do a lot of music, which is great,
Yeah.
but I always try and do music for a goal, whether I'm making something for someone else
Mhm.
or I want to write something that'll do really well. And I need to sit down and write stuff that is good for me that I feel proud of.
Yeah.
That's my goal, is to release my next solo piano album with something that means a lot to me,
Yeah.
um, instead of what I think would be good for people.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Just doing what makes you happy. That's another thing I think we all need to work on too as a society, is just doing what makes us happy. Because if we don't make ourselves happy, we can't make others happy, right?
If you
And
can't love yourself, how
yeah,
the hell are you gonna love?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I just think it's so important. And part of being in a rock bottom mindset, or learning, is recognizing that you are human and that you're going to make mistakes, and that life does not come with a manual. It is
No,
bound to
God, no.
make
Yeah.
mistakes, like, but I think we just got to get to a level where our mistakes aren't costing us our life.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to bring up, actually, because this kind of is similar to rock bottom, but I find that a lot of people, whether they're family or friends, people take people's time for granted, and
Yes.
they don't really miss out until the person passes away.
Yeah. And as someone who's lost both my parents through cancer and then a lot of my family through cancer, um, when I hear friends or family, mostly friends, all being like, maybe I won't go to Thanksgiving dinner. Um, maybe I'll just sit at home and watch Netflix. I'm like, just, go do it. Um, if you can sweep things under the rug, I know so and so X of your family members, maybe it doesn't make you feel great.
Mhm.
But be there, be present.
Yeah.
Even if it's just for the one meal, go in, make your say highs, be there,
Yeah.
make an experience, have a memory. I always say,
Yeah.
um, because when they're gone, if you have some cool memories, I think it's worth it.
100%. I agree with that. 100% is, it's okay to have boundaries with your family, obviously, but, really trying to embrace the time you have with them. And I have people that don't make effort with me anymore. And I've learned to just take a step back,
Yeah.
and just appreciate the people that do make time for me,
Well,
and
and that's the thing, like, don't break your back for it.
yeah,
But definitely, if you live in the same city and they invited you out, and the food's made,
yeah,
uh, put on your shield, put on something that makes you feel comfortable.
yeah,
Um, Go be there. And if it turns out, to become a shouting match and you leave and it's just like, well, don't have to do that till next year.
yeah, no, exactly, exactly. Yeah, no, 100%. I appreciate you being here and everything, and collaborating with me on this. This is such a powerful topic, and I'm excited to share this with our viewers. And yeah, I look forward to seeing your journey and your music and everything.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I really appreciate your feedback and like your perspective. And yeah,
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
thank you.
And my just last things is stay inspired.
Yeah,
Thank you for everything you do for people who need to be reminded on how special everyone is,
yeah.
and what they can do. It's people like you that work hard to create this content, connect with people that just share their stories, that, you know, makes a difference, that changes things.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for being here.
No problem. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.